Welcome back to the 20th episode of the Dear Young Men podcast. In today's episode, we are going to learn how to move on from past mistakes on Dear Young Men. Thank you for listening. This is the 20th podcast, which is awesome. If you enjoy the podcast, please hit like and subscribe. Rate it a 5-star. Do all that crap. I think it helps. I think that I've seen it help the people when I get a follower. Typically, some more views or listens will tend to follow that. So if you do like this and you're not following, please hit follow and please like it or give it a 5-star, whatever it is. This is a topic. Most of the podcast is basically stuff from my own personal life that I just say, you know what, I'm going to talk about this. This is something that I've messed up on. I've dwelled on the past too much. And I've lived in a fake fantasy of the past of, man, had I done this, my life would be a lot different. And that's a bad way to live because you didn't do that and your life is what your life is. So all you can do is change the future and the present. You can't change the past. So let's start with chapter 1, Dear Young Women. And I know this podcast is called Dear Young Men, but I'm going to speak to the ladies out there. So guys, cover your ears. In all seriousness, I came across this post on Instagram the other day and it broke my heart. And it's a pretty remarkable thing to see as a father of 2 young girls and as a husband to a woman that he loves dearly. And it's a picture of this girl and it says, "No one ever told me how sad you feel after a hookup." It says HU. It took me a minute to figure out what HU meant. And she's got like a very, very sad face. And the first couple comments on the post is, they're all 5 of them are from women. So Brooklyn says, "Exactly what made me realize I'm a lover girl." Emma says, "Anytime I've done it, I cried the whole day after," which is just, I feel so bad for that poor girl. She doesn't know that she's been lied to her whole life and that they were told that she was told that it would be okay if you do this, and yet she still continues to do this thing. It's just remarkable. Abby says, "I tried for the first time after years of being against it. Never felt so worthless." And then she says LMAO, which is a coping mechanism, obviously. to feel worthless is, I don't know if there's a much worse feeling than to feel worthless. Sophie says, "I feel used and abused afterwards." And Lexi says, "I cry and then I'm okay the next day and do it to myself again, endless cycle." Which is just, these poor women are just, it's so sad. I feel so bad for them. And I don't know why. To me, it's like, why do I feel bad for them? They're doing it to themselves. And I think it's because I feel bad for them because they've been lied to by a culture that it doesn't hate them, but it hates what they could be. And what they could be are mothers. And the culture is deeply against motherhood because mothers are, in my opinion, mothers are the thing that draws you closer to God. A good mother will draw you closer to God. And one way I know that is because this old fellow, Jesus Christ, I don't know if you've heard of him. He entered the world not through a man and not because of a man, but only because of a woman. He enters the world through Mother Mary and obviously the Virgin Mary. And so you know that women are deeply important because the Bible is obviously without Mother Mary, we wouldn't have had Jesus Christ, and we would not have a chance in this world. We would be unsaved. And so you know that women and motherhood is deeply important, but they've been lied to their whole lives. The thing is, when coming up with this podcast, it's like, I want to a beginning, middle, and end. And the beginning of this is living. We're talking about moving past mistakes, and these girls are clearly making mistakes constantly. But like, why do they keep making these same mistakes? And I think the reason that they make the mistakes is because, for one, they're unwilling to admit it out loud. Basically, obviously, as a Christian, you're taught to pray and to talk to God, and so you begin to develop this relationship with Him that you understand. For one, you know you can't hide anything, so that means talking to Him in a way is much better because there's nothing. You're not trying to get one over on Him or anything like that. You're just trying to figure out the truth and to get to a point where you are doing His will better and living in accordance to the way that He wants you to live, and obviously to become the person that you were made to be and to grow closer into the person that you were made to be. So I think that these women are a perfect example of people who've been lied to by the culture endlessly, and they are unable to move on from their past mistakes. That one girl saying that I cry and then I'm okay the next day and do it to myself over and over again, an endless cycle. I mean, this is a girl who's allowing herself to do this, who's choosing to do this because she has been dragged down by the past, because obviously it's a Christian podcast. She has not been redeemed for her sins. And because if she was, she could be cleaned and cleansed from the things that she has done and can enter into basically a new life with Christ, hand in hand, walking side by side. But it's hard. I mean, you develop these over time. You develop these habits, and habits are really, really hard to break. And I think for a lot of people living in this like sort of malaise of, I made this mistake, I made that mistake, I made every mistake in the book. And, as a Christian, like, hope is a Christian value. And so having hope that you can move past that is a Christian virtue. And the only way really to do that, though, is to understand that mistakes are going to happen. You're going to mess up, not letting yourself dwell on those too much, but also understanding that you have to learn from them, which is the beginning of chapter 2, learning to let go of your past. I have personally made a gazillion mistakes in my life, and I have lived in that stupor of, had I just done this different, had I just done that different. And you'll waste a month thinking like that. You'll waste months thinking like that. Had I just said this at that time, had I done this at that time, I would be where I'm supposed to be, and blah, 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 blah. And there's always that old adage of the best time to build a tree, the plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. And I think that you have to begin to learn to move on from your past. There's so many mistakes that I've made. One of them is one of the biggest ones that I think about all the time, that I dwell on, that I personally dwell on, which is why I'm talking about this, because this is stuff that I've messed up on and currently am messing up on. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to that point where I've mastered life. I'm really close. I know I'm like right there, right at the cusp of it. I'm certain of that. But really, for me, I'm like a very numbers focused guy. I'm an artist in some sense, but I'm a very numbers focused guy. And so for me, my wife and I, we're sort of opposites in that sense. She's very good with numbers, but she's not like numbers centric like I am. And so we've always had a bit of a push and pull with spending money. So spending money on a vacation, $4,000 on a vacation versus $4,000. Oh my gosh, Carter, that's $4,000. If we put that down on a car, or if we could buy a car with that kind of money, or we could save that and invest it in a few years, we could use that money to buy a car, blah, 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 blah. And the thing is like, you'll never remember that car that you had, how many horsepower it had, whatever it was. But you will remember that vacation forever. You will see the pictures. You will watch the video. And it's me. So I would make this fantastic documentary about me and my family going out on this trip. What we wanted to do is go on a road trip, and then our basement flooded. And I realized that we are in a home that is so expensive that if anything goes wrong, we are on the hook for so much money just because it's so nice and it's so fantastical that we sort of trapped ourselves. We sort of golden handcuffed ourselves in this home. And so the mistake that I made is that I valued money over everything. Instead of buying a much cheaper home, I was so focused on buying a home that was basically as expensive as I could afford comfortably because of inflation. Back in 2021, I just assumed inflation was going to go crazy because anybody could have, once you saw the government just blowing money into the economy the way it was in America. It was pretty obvious inflation was going to go crazy. So why not just try to get ahead of that and buy a really expensive home? And we did. We did that, and we've done really well financially. But in the last 3 years, we've owned this home for 3 years. We haven't gone on a single vacation, not one. We've had 2 kids. We haven't gone on a single vacation for even a weekend, for an extended weekend. Nothing like that at all. And I've really let my family down because I've just been so focused on money. And oh man, in the past I made this mistake with money, and I made that mistake with money, and so I'm just gonna dwell on that. I'm not gonna learn from it. I'm gonna dwell on it, and I'm gonna make sure I do the exact opposite. I'll never let that type of thing happen to me ever again. and I did that for a long time. And then recently I've been working in the basement and finishing it up and just getting it to a point where it's good and it's cleaned up. The floors are in. We put in this LVP flooring. It's like a luxury vinyl plank. So if we had carpet in here before, that was really the big problem, is we had carpet. If we didn't have carpet downstairs and I just had this luxury vinyl plank, with the way I installed the flooring, I would have just had to vacuum it up and then it would have been good, because I have this other layer below the flooring that is like sort of this, I don't even know how to describe it. Basically, it allows the concrete to breathe, and if water were to somehow get in underneath it, it would be able to dry out, because it's not, it allows like a half-inch gap. Anyways, long story long, not that you even care about that, but it's my podcast, so sorry, you're gonna have to listen. And so now I've like prepped it for if something like that were to ever happen again. It's like you got to be careful of that. And especially because then while I was doing it, my wife and I, we decided to sell. We decided to sell the house, and we actually bought a house yesterday. They accepted our offer yesterday, and we bought a home that was half the price. It's more than half. It's like 40% of the price that we're asking for the home that we're selling. And the reason is because I want to live life, and I want to have more experiences, spend more time with my kids, and do the things that we just aren't able to do now because we're so hyper focused on money. And it's hard, like learning to let go of your past in a way is really tough, because it happened to you. And as a Christian, in a way, it's like you don't want to let go of your past. You don't want to just be unburdened by the past and whatever happened is fine and no big deal. No, like you need to worry about the past. You need to learn from the past, but you can't let the past clog a better vision of the future because you made a couple mistakes in the past. And obviously there's a perfect Bible verse for this. It's Isaiah 43:18, and in Isaiah 43:18 it says, "Forgive the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing, now it springs up, do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." That's Isaiah 43:18 through 19. We are not built to dwell on the past. You were built to move forward. That's the whole Christianity. That's the whole thing, is Jesus dies on the cross for your sins, so that way, and you get baptized, so that way you can be born again, and all your sins are forgiven. So it's like the whole crux of Christianity. So now it begs a question, which is chapter 3. Where do we go from here? Change is not going to happen over the course of minutes, days, or even weeks. Progress is crazy slow, and the only way to really enact any real change, let's go back to the example in the beginning with the women who are treating themselves like garbage. Those women need to change, right? They all feel gross, they feel disgusting, but they don't know what to do. And they turn to the culture, and the culture tells them that what they're doing is right, and what they're doing is good, and what they're doing is what they should be doing, even though they feel crappy. Even though what they're doing makes them feel like complete junk. And we've all done this. Drinking, I think drinking has been, and doing any type of drug really, has been really hyper popularized in the past. I don't know, I would say my generation loves alcohol. And I think the reason is because they're kind of childless, which is sad, but they love alcohol because it allows them to forget about the fact that they're doing nothing with their lives. I'm not saying that's 100% true, but they do really love alcohol. And I think there's something interesting about that. And it begs a question, like, if you're dwelling on this past of drinking alcohol, consuming, doing the same thing day in and day out, and you're never changing, you're never growing, you're never becoming more. And so the only way to really change, though, to stop doing those things that are negative, is you have to pray. You have to pray out loud. It's actually like really easy. It's very fundamental advice. It's just do the thing, pray, and do it out loud. There are a couple practical reasons for it. Obviously, on a spiritual reason, God will help you. I've mentioned this before, but basically the way I perceive God is He is like a river, and you can swim against the tide or sort of side to side with the current, and you can make progress to where you think you want to go. But He has a direction planned for you, and if you swim with the tide, you'll make much more progress much more quickly because you're swimming along with the current. If you've ever done that in like a lazy river, that's sort of how I always imagined it. Understanding that you have to like start praying, and you have to learn from the mistakes that you made, and you have to, in order to not repeat them again. And it's hard. It's so hard to just constantly think about the things it's so hard to not just dwell on your past. I know it's easy, but you just have to do it. And really, your only hope is to pray to God. I mean, really, it just is. Because the culture is not, nobody has your best interest at heart ever. Except for me. Obviously, I'm the best. But again, I've said this before, but it's like I don't really know you personally. I am rooting for the idea of you, but like I don't know you. But I want you to do better. But I'm not saying, oh, come talk to me, join my Discord, do any of that stuff. Anybody does that, it's just, I don't know. I think that most of that stuff is kind of just BS in a way to make money off of you. It's pretty easy. You just pray. You just open up and be honest. Look yourself in the mirror and pray. Leave your eyes open, looking yourself in the mirror, saying it out loud. Just say it. He will listen to you. He will hear you. And there's like some cathartic things that happen with that when you do things like that. The spiritual reason, obviously, I mentioned earlier, but there are some practical reasons. Is you start to lay out your mistakes and you start to lay out the things that you've messed up on. And in doing that, you start to admit the things that you've done wrong and the things that you want to change. Again, you're that woman, you're one of those women who've slept around, who've treated themselves like garbage. And you say, I am sick of sleeping around. Help me, give me the strength to avoid that. Well, now you've sort of told yourself that you want to stop doing this thing. And if you could put it into God's hands and trust that He will guide you in the right direction, you will be saved. You will have a chance and you'll be happier. So that is how to move on from past mistakes. I think that it's an interesting topic to talk about. It's hard. It's life is so difficult. And I know that we all dwell on our mistakes that we've made in our past. And you wake up sometimes at 3 a.m. and you're just sitting there ashamed of the things that you've done. And I know it's hard to it's easy for me to say, well, just do this or do that. It's not that easy. Nothing's that easy. But hopefully you will have a chance. Hopefully something will click with what I said and maybe you will move forward and move past the things that have been holding you back and into the person you were made to be. So the comment section, I had a comment, but if you want to leave a comment, it needs to be something like, ask me a question. I think that's really what we want. Ask me a question in the comment section. And if you have any questions that you don't want to leave in the comment section, you can email it to me or DM me on Instagram. Any of those things, you have any questions, just send them to me and then maybe I'll answer them. I think that'd be good. And if you want to be anonymous, just say, I want to be anonymous. You could send me an email, probably the most anonymity, whatever, the most anonymous. Scott Schroeder YT@gmail.com is the way to do that. SCOTTSCHROEDERYT@gmail.com. All right, and now the quote of the day. This is getting so easy just to do verses, and I think I might just change it to the verse today, but this is still technically a quote. I thought this was a great tie-in to the first part of the first chapter, which is the Dear Young Women part. And this is from 1 Corinthians 13, 4-13. If you've ever been to a wedding, you've probably heard this, but it is a good reminder to those women who are engaging in acts that they perceive to be some form of love, but clearly it's not love, because love, well, we could just listen, then we could go into that a little bit. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I have been fully known. So now faith, hope, and love abides, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Again, this is like a common marriage thing you hear, like a speech or something, or maybe during the ceremony, during the reception, whatever. Like in the beginning of this episode, we talked about the women sleeping around, treating themselves poorly and tricked by an insidious lie. But thankfully, we know what love actually is. It has a definition. And when we are confronted with the truth of ourselves in the mirror alone, we know the truth. We know that the man that is in your bed right now, who in a way took advantage of you, in a way you let yourself be taken advantage of, we know that that man does not love you. He used you in the same way that you used him. We know that love bears all things, and in love endures all things. And Christ's sacrifice on the cross was not for the people of that time. His ultimate act of love transcends time and space because love never ends. And it's just a reminder that you, and Jesus says it's like, love yourself, love your neighbor as you love thyself. And it's a constant reminder to treat yourself better. Treat yourself in a way that he would want you to treat yourself, and just understand that love can bear all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. Jesus' love for you never ends. And I hope for you that you will fully understand that. And in the future, you will hopefully live into that idea much greater. And I hope I can live more towards and more into love, because that is basically the best thing that you can do. Finally, for the unsolicited advice section. It's going to be short today. I'm tired. I've had a long couple weeks. The unsolicited advice is to drink more water. I'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.